presentation only for knowledge sharing, and I have taken considerations of various and views of various professionals and domain experts for compiling this knowledge sharing presentation, but it is not a professional service or advice from Datacode, although Datacode is always willing to engage with clients on specific situations if required. So let's begin with the course, and let's first start with understanding the mining life cycle. So basically, if you see a mining life or a project, or it starts with identifying an asset. Now, an asset can be broadly divided into two broad categories of work, which is projects and mines. So an asset can starts with a mine project and ends with a mine, depending on it may end before having a mine and before having a mine in project section, but ultimately a project goes into mines and then it closes. So when we talk about projects, it starts with exploration and feasibility. So locating mineral anomalies, discovery and sampling, resource definitions, drilling programs, then economic studies. Then comes planning and construction. Once you have identified a exploration potential, an economic exploration potential through a project, you come to that planning and construction phase where you do mine planning, do some environmental and social, identify environmental and social issues, and permitting, banking. You want try to identify what is the bankable economic studies and how much you will be getting a profit out of it. So, and then the infrastructure, building the mine, and then comes ultimately the production where you start making money, extracting the ore, crushing, grinding, metal production, waste management. And then finally mine ends with its closure where you clean up the site, reclamation and environmental monitoring. So that's all about a mining life cycle when we talk about. Now coming to the course, the mineral resource management basically starts with identifying a resource. So there's a complete process of how you are going to identify the resource. Then comes establishing those resources, classifying those resources and establishing the reserves out of those resources. Then reporting those reserves and resources, and then reconciliation, and finally the reconciliation where you actually mining it and mining the assets and mining the resources you have identified and comparing what you are actually getting out of it. So when we talk about identifying a resource, we are talking about the complete process of mineral resource estimation. So the process of identifying the mineral resource is what we can also call as mineral resource evaluation. And mineral resource evaluation starts with data collection, like mapping, drilling, logging, sampling, assaying, QAQC, then doing quality checks and quality analysis, and then density estimations, and there are various other data collection processes involved as well. Then comes geological ore body modeling, which is basically interpreting the geology and the delineation of the resources. Then comes exploratory data analysis, which is basically analyzing the data within the ore bodies and within the drilling, within your identified project area to uncover the hidden treasures or hidden potentials through the data sets of that deposit. Then finally comes estimating those resources and then classifying it and reporting it. So let's start with data collection. Data collection is very first step in any resource estimation process. Or in other words, you can say a resource estimation process starts the moment we start collecting data and measuring the characteristics of the rocks and ore related to mineral exploration. Hence, it is very much important to maintain a chain of custody like chain of custody includes sign off of the sampling processes from when it is physically taken, then sent to the laboratory for analysis, to the capturing in the database, and all these processes comes under what we can call a good practice. Now, once that all is done, you also have to remember that the average grade and tonnage of the deposit is estimated from the sampling information, which is nothing but a drill core, which are few kilograms in weight. And further, these samples are reduced to few grams, a teaspoon of sample is actually used for analyzing, and that is giving you the ultimately information about that deposit. So it's very much important that the quality of the representative sample depends on how your practices are, how much good your practices are, and how you're collecting the data and what is the process of collection. Then comes the geological modeling. All data collected are then visually verified using different 3D modeling software packages. A shape of the geology of the study area is inferred, and on that basis, the ore body or the multiple ore lenses are inferred within those geological domains, and models are created. When your ore body model has been defined, a geological model has been defined, then comes the exploratory data analysis, which is also called EDA. EDA reveals the hidden treasures of the hidden treasures that are locked up in our data. For this, we undergo various processes of analysis using various software packages, as well as you can use general Excel as well to analyze those data sets. But that what it does is it basically this process establishes knowledge about the deposit. You can determine a measure of confidence to be associated with it, and you can also understand the risks involved in your data sets and in your deposit. Now, there can be multiple risks, and it is very much important to understand those risks, because you have to appreciate the thing that you are going to estimate, or you are going to identify what is there in the unknown areas within that deposit using the known sample locations, and that is in itself is a risk. So you have to put all data and information under microscope, and you have to critically identify, critically analyze the geological interpretations, rock types, the sample lengths, densities, etc. And also you have to critically analyze the characteristics of the sample measurements, like grades, what is the width, the quality of the elements, likewise. And then you have to build a relationship between your observations in terms of quantitative as well as qualitative measurements. Now, the process of EDA is in itself a long chapter. If you want to know further about the exploratory data analysis, I'm hoping that I'm soon going to conduct an online class. The dates are not finalized yet, but you can contact me or DataCo to know further about it. Now comes resource estimation, which is again a critical part and important part of identifying the potential of a project or potential of a deposit. Now, resource estimations are carried out within that inferred geological domains, and it's a complete cycle of process, and it starts with data collection, which I already mentioned in previous slides. Then comes validation of those data and quality checks, and then again you do some exploratory data analysis, which I mentioned in the previous slide. You have to repeat those exploratory data analysis again within those geological ore body domains. And then there are series of complex processes like inferring the characteristics of samples to deposit, choosing an appropriate estimation model, validation of the estimation model, and application of that estimation model into the deposit, and further in various further studies. Although these steps are complex processes and requires a background knowledge of geostatistics to carry out the estimation process, although without geostatistical knowledge, you can carry out the process with the help of softwares, but it will be just mechanical process and you can't appreciate or validate the accuracy of the estimation process. So it's very much recommended that you should have some geostatistical knowledge while doing the resource estimation processes. So if we talk about the cycle of resource estimation process, as I mentioned, it starts with data validation. And in fact, from my experience, data validation can take up to 70 to 80% of any project evaluation or resource estimation time, and which is the largest proportion. Now, data validation is actually assessing the integrity of the information. Sorry, I would request you all to keep it in mute, please. Yeah, thank you. So as I was saying, data validation is actually assessing the integrity of the information. Now, these data mostly consist of records captured into a digital format on a computer, but not produced by it. So key points which needs to be considered for data validation are: treat your data with caution. Now, errors can occur at any stage. It can also occur during capturing phase as well. So it's very much important. You should have or develop an ability to read the data sets and ask questions about the data. Now, advantages of having a proper data validation is you will be getting a clean data set in the basis of reliable estimation for the which will become the basis for a reliable estimation process. Non-validated data or a database places a question mark on the validity of the estimation. So, and has direct influence on the resource classification as well. Now, as I was talking about data validation, a proper data validation is not at all possible without a proper database management system. Now, what is a database management system? It is a system which can provide a structure where data is defined, compiled, collated, and maintained as information, which can provide a practical knowledge for enhancing our wisdom in realistic applications for successful outcomes. So a database is not only data, it's a pyramid. It's a pyramid of data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. It starts with collecting data, then getting the data and then applying data with some interpretation and which creates information out of it, and that information with putting with some context of understanding and meaning becomes knowledge, and that knowledge, when we get into its insight and understand, then only we can apply our wisdom and come out with desired outcome based on those knowledges. So the next step of any resource estimation after data validation, after defining the ore body, and after doing the exploratory data analysis is to infer the characteristics of the samples to deposit. Here we basically build a stationarity around our deposit model. We try to identify the various populations which are there in the estimations or in the deposit or in the samples. So the inference is based on the information, basically the information that is deduced from the samples, which is again there are some assumptions. So assumptions on data validity and representativity increases risk. So always try to keep your assumptions as simple as possible to a minimum, and have some reasonable and logical form of every relevant point of view. Like if you are using geological evidences and creating some domains or creating some assumptions around geological domains, you should have some reasonable and logical form of associated with it. Similarly for structural and or any mathematical assumptions. And always remember, all those assumptions should be verifiable, because if you can't verify your assumptions, it will bring only biasness. So always you should be taking care that all your assumptions first should be simple, and then second, they should be verifiable. Now coming to the method of estimation. The method of estimation first starts with deciding on the estimation method, which is basically often overlooked, but you need to consider the knowledge and options available. Then you have to, and there can be different estimates for different situations. So that you have to consider. And also you have to be open with all the options dependent on the assumptions while selecting the estimation method. Once your estimation method is selected, verify that estimation method. Grade estimates should always be unbiased, so you have to verify that. There, for example, there can be, here I have quoted two conditions. Like first condition is in an estimate there is a deviation of in average grade by 10% from the true grade. True grade is whatever the sample average grade coming from the samples. Now there is second option is having an estimate with an average of 5% variation from true grade. So what will be the correct one? There is nothing like correct. Everything is estimated, but the second option will be more nearer to the correct estimates, because the average variation is only 5%. to the true grade. Then comes implementing those estimation methods, applying the estimation method. Now again, it is very much critical to all Orebody evaluations from feasibility to implementation. So, and you should be assessing the potential of the Orebody with associated with some measure of confidence along with it. Now, coming to the factors affecting the confidence in the resource estimates. There are majorly four factors which contribute to the confidence of on which the confidence depends. First one is the reliability of the geological model, which is basically identifying continuity of the mineralization, grade and thickness, interpretation of the geology, delineation of the resource, sampling and grid configuration. Then comes quality of the sampling, quality control and quality assurance, accuracy, cost, precision, cost effectiveness. Then comes the density analysis, which is basically tonnage and identifying the tonnages and verifying those tonnages. Content and quality estimates are functions of the tonnages. And finally, the reliability of the estimation method. Because there will be, depending on the level of information and the level of data, estimates may vary and evaluation method may vary. So that is very much critical to identify with the increase or decrease in the level of information or confidence or in the deposit, the reliability on the evaluation method will change. Now a question will come to your mind, why estimate? So there's a famous saying that I would rather be approximately right than precisely wrong. So that's the whole intention of having and doing an estimate of the resources. Estimates provide answers to problems where there are no definite answers because of incomplete information or because of the information is at least partially unreliable. There can be estimation errors which should be identified, and there are various methods of doing so. And you should be doing those estimation checks to identify how much correct you are to the true grades. After estimation, resource needs to be classified, and I have mentioned here two examples. So one left hand side is showing a UNFC classification, and then in the right hand side it's the CRISCO template, which is internationally accepted reporting method of mineral resources and reserves and exploration results. So in this going forward in this slides, I'll just cover the CRISCO template definitions of the resources and reserves in accordance with the CRISCO template. And maybe if you need some more detail about the various international reporting codes or about UNFC, you can contact me and we can talk about it. So now coming to the definitions and of resource classifications. So majorly there are three types of mineral resources when we talk about CRISCO template, that is inferred, indicated and measured. So let's go through and in terms of reserves, it is probable and proved. So let's go through the definitions first and then we'll move ahead with the classifications, how we are doing the classifications. Mineral resource so definition of mineral resource. A mineral resource is a concentration or occurrence of solid material or economic interest in such a form, grade or quality and quantity that there are reasonable prospects for eventual economic extraction. So a mineral resource is then divided into various categories like inferred, indicated and measured, depending on mainly two major criteria, which is geological evidence and then the confidence in the estimates. And accordingly, they are, with increasing confidence, they are classified as inferred, indicated and measured resources. When we talk about reserves, after classification of resources comes establishing the reserves. Let us go through the definition of the reserves as well. An ore reserve is the economically mineable part of a measured and or indicated mineral resource. It includes diluting materials and allowances for losses which may occur when the material is mined or extracted. The studies on which the ore reserves is based demonstrate that at the time of reporting, extraction could reasonably be justified. That's the general definition which is there in the Crisco template. Now, if we compare the mineral resources to the ore reserves, a mineral resource is an in situ concentration or occurrence of solid material of economic interest in such form, grade, or quality or quantity that they are reasonable. They have reasonable prospects for eventual economic extraction. And the ore reserves is economically mineable part of that ore resource for which time of reporting extraction could be reasonably justified. So in short, you can say that a mineral resource is in the ground with reasonable prospects of eventual economic extraction, whereas an ore reserve is the material that is ready to be extracted and is economic now. So that's the basic difference between a resource and a mineral reserve. Now let's consider in a more layman language that I try to identify the definitions or understand resources and reserves. So let us consider for a moment a mineral resource estimate classification like a fishing tail. So we are out in fishing and thinking about catching a big one. So we are not sure exactly what we might catch ultimately, but this is how we can understand the classification of resources and reserves. So when you have that fish, that is ultimately you understand what the volume of the fish will be, what it's the weight of the fish will be, and what is the type of the fish, and that is your measured resource condition. Now the proved reserves is where maybe you can relax. Now the probable reserve, if you talk about probable reserve, it is in your hand and you are started preparing the fish for your final dish. And the proved reserve is where maybe you can relax and enjoy the fruits of your labor with confidence. But don't forget, while champion of the dish is the fish, but the meal is only complete if you're perfect with all the extras. And these extras are modifying factors, right from having a proper knife to cut the fish to the serving plate with all the extras to flavor the fish. So that's your modifying factors and proved reserves. So the modifying factors are considerations used to convert the mineral resources to ore reserves. There can be multiple modifying factors like mining, processing, metallurgical, dilution. There can be legal fact and government factors as well. There can be infrastructure issues, environmental factors, economic factors, marketing and social factors as well. Now, once you have identified the resources, classified them, and also have classified the reserves out of it, then comes finally the you want to report it. You have to report it to the public and also to the statutory government. So basically, there are two types of reporting in general. One is public reporting, which is reporting to the investors, to the stock exchange, and the second is one is reporting to the statutory bodies like government bodies. The very basic need of public reporting is to appraise the investors. The mining industry depends on financial investment that is in turn depend on how well investors understand the risks involved in estimating the mineral resources or ore reserves. So there are professional organizations in terms of public reporting in several different countries who have published codes that set some minimum standards for public reporting of mineral resources and ore reserves, like JOG Code of Reporting for Australia, SAMREC for South Africa. Then there is an NI 43101 for Canada and SME for America. Then there is in terms of statutory reporting, for example, in India, we have IBM, state governments, etc. Now, there are some basic questions which we should always be asking to ourselves when we are reporting, or rather whenever we are doing some sort of estimation or classification or itself in reporting. So the questions can be, what is it you are, then how was it collected, where did it come from, what else has been done, how was it assessed, is it reliable, why it is important, materiality. You should be identifying what will be the material impact on those reporting or on those estimations. Is it suitable for investors? Because ultimately money is going to come from them. Then are you reporting a balanced report or you are conducting some cherry picking? So always remember, the report always should be a balanced report. Then always use some good pictures to have a feel of the deposit, have a feel of the report. Now this is all about mineral resource estimation, what I wanted to talk about, and but mineral resource estimation will not be completed without the topic of reconciliation. So ore reserves are constantly changing, although not necessarily in a mineral way. Once you have identified a resource and classified the reserves, the next step in mining life cycle is production, extracting the ore from the ground. Then the question will be, did you get what you thought you would get after the production? Here comes the process called reconciliation. Measurements of all the mining processes are critical, and we should be able to track the mine to mill reconciliation properly. And if managed and understood, any requirement for changes to the modifying factor inputs can be assessed and applied in the reserve classification as well. So not only this, resource estimations can also be improved using reconciliation and of what we estimated and what we are getting ultimately. There is an example which I have shown here of reconciliation model. So in the image, so it is starting right from the resource model to the reserve, then to the mine planning, ore control, dispatch, and process plant, and the reconciliations can be done. So for this, all components need to be measured and compared properly to ensure that the mineral resource and ore reserve models are delivering as planned, tons and grades. Now, if one aspect is not reconciling, then steps can be taken to understand why, and the estimates and the process can be updated and improved. So that's all I have today in this basics. So finally, I'll just say that the secret of any estimation is basically is to understand the deposit properly. Always remember, garbage in is garbage out. So if you can read and understand the deposit properly, you can report the results correctly, and you will be potentially adding substantial value in its own way. So that's all. Thank you. Thank you for attending this webinar. And if there is any questions, I'm happy to take it. And you can put your questions in the chat box and I'll try to take it from there one by one. So is there any questions? So actually, I'm not sure if, we have provided better good amount of time for the webinar, but it's just the basics. That's why I have covered that much. So if there is any queries, we can talk about it. And maybe if right now you don't find any questions, then you can contact me in my mail ID and also data code and we will be happy to answer your questions. And also I'm going to conduct some various courses or online webinar courses like data validation, exploratory data analysis, and also an international code of reporting like JOG. But I'm not sure when I will be going to do that, but you can contact me or data code to know more about it. And that's all from my side. Thank you. And we'll meet again. Thank you very much.